And then there's a...
What I mean is that in February of
I need to
1987,
interrupt you because we're on the back end of a vote. We get 15 minutes to vote, and I've got a few minutes now to get over to the floor and vote as soon as I come back. But I need to ask you to try to confer to see if you can organize maybe the next 15 minutes or so, because I do need to get to the next panelist and to Argentina, and I want to try to keep it as factually tight as we can. We'll stand in recess for the next few minutes. Hearing will come to order. Let me just explain to everybody that regrettably we are running tighter than we want to be. I've got to get to the Banking Committee markup before too long. So we need to be somewhat in summary. And some of the documents can be placed in the record. We will release some of the documents that explain some of what is going on. So if you summarize and we put the documents in, I think we're going to have the record that we need in terms of this issue.
may I continue?
Sí.
Thank you very much. I was just talking about the February 10th, 87 document coordinating a trip of Mr. Chaffee to Peru to have a meeting with President Garcia. This was not to talk about the floods, quite obviously, floods that were going on in Peru at the time. I must say that in February of 1987, the deposits of Peru and BCCI went up to $261 million, in excess of $61 million over the limit. This was the maximum excess over the limit throughout the whole period. Here I have another document talking about Alberto Calvo. This is a document from Alberto Calvo to Mr. Chaffee of BCCI, the Latin American Caribbean Office, Regional Office, July 21st, when the reports were received, negative reports about BCCI in Panama, meaning that the Reserve Bank was considering withdrawing its deposits. Here I have this document which talks about a conversation with Alberto Calvo, who is not a BCR or BCCI or a Peruvian official. This is a conversation with Daniel Carboneto, who is an advisor of the President of the Republic, talking about how it's possible that steps are being taken to have a new conversation with President Garcia to see what can happen or what can be done about Peru's deposits. We will give you this document so it can
Just tell me for the
be on the record.
Who is Alberto Calvo?
El diputado Pedro Cateriano le puede ampliar.
Mr. Cateriano can tell you. We have investigated who Mr. Calvo is, and we received the information that this is a banker managing Latin American relations for BCCI. He is an Argentine national. Mr. Alberto Calvo had relations before he was in BCCI in the Inter-American Bank, where he had some relations with Peruvian officers also working in the Inter-American Bank.
Now this, let me just say, this memo, which I'm going to put in the record that follows the previous memo of the February 10th, this memo talks about further meetings and says that they agree to meet with the President of the Central Bank 1 week after he takes office, and after that they will visit with the President of the Republic. So this is BCCI talking about top-level meetings between the President of the Central Bank and the President of the Republic. Is that correct? Okay. Let me just try to speed this along a little bit. There is a subsequent July 21st, 1987 memo, which is also from Mr. Alberto Calvo, also to Mr. Chaffee. No, I'm on the wrong one here. Excuse me. There is an August 25th memo from Mr. Alberto Calvi to Mr. Shafi, and that memo talks about the relation with the Central Bank of Peru. And it talks
with a
about...
friend.
Correct, in a meeting with a friend. It talks about the central bank continuing its present operational relationship with BCC if the line of credit could be increased. Is that correct? Was the line of credit at that time increased?
There was a statement that the line of credit would be increased, and we think that the person that had the meeting...
Well, I don't want to ask who you think it was. I mean, do you know who it was? Do you know who was at the meeting? You don't know who was at the meeting. Well, then let's just leave out. I don't want any guessing. All right, well, this memo will also be made part of the record. Now, are there any other memoranda that you have? Excuse me, then there's a... Is there any other memorandum or letter or document pertaining to BCCI meetings with respect to these transactions?
No, not for now. But what we have to say is that the Reserve Bank, being autonomous in nature, is made up of 4 representatives of the executive branch named by the President and 3 members named by the Senate. During Garcia's presidency, his party had a majority and named the President as President a person who had been the Secretary of the Presidency. So it has been proven that there was no reason for Alan Garcia to have been in any of this. There was no reason for Alan Garcia to have been in any of this. I would like to say very briefly what happened with the Mirage. This is a case which really deserves your attention, if you will allow me.
We need to do it, but we need to do it quickly.
Very quickly. In August of 1986, Peru decided it would not make substantial profits on the sales of 14 Mirages. This was a decision that the Peruvian government made to get rid of these Mirages because Peru could not afford to pay Marcel Dassault anymore. But it could resell these planes to another country. This was in the sales contract with Marcel Dassault and appeared in 3 different paragraphs. But Peru did not do this. According to statements made by the representative of the government, the statements made in the committee I preside, these sales were not made to third countries because this was not authorized by President Alan Garcia. The damage to the country and the profit to third parties resides in the fact that the market price of these 14 Mirages, the price which was paid for each plane at that time was $37 million, as stipulated in the statement of the Peruvian negotiator Hector Delgado Parker. What Peru had to pay to Marcel Dassault, the manufacturer for each plane, because these planes were contracted for in 1982 to be manufactured later, were $12 million. That is to say, there was a difference of $25 million per aircraft. Peru, however, did not make this transfer to third countries, for which all it needed to do was get the approval of the French government. We have discovered, however, by Mr. Morgenthau's work, that this operation ended up as a resale. BCCI ended up being the resales agent, and the London office of BCCI approved this sale. And according to what we've heard, there was a falsification of documents to hide the country which was the final destination of these aircraft. We have received information that this plane was Iraq. was alleged to be Iraq during the period of Saddam Hussein. This true customer was being hidden because arms traffickers, international arms traffickers, were
But you don't-
involved in this,
Let me interrupt you. May I interrupt you, please?
working in BCCI of London.
But again, this is something that is not fully documented yet, correct? This is an accusation. Is that accurate?
The documents exist in Mr. Morgenthau's office. They are in an investigation phase, and that is why we are stating this here in the Kerry Commission to ask for the cooperation of international authorities so that we can clarify this. Mr. Morgenthau's people think that there was a $100 million gap, and we think it's between 150 and $200 million. Sir, this requires an investigation, obviously. We have gotten a statement from Mr. Morgenthau for Peruvian television. This was broadcast to our whole country. And there he affirms that this negotiation caused Peru to lose $100 million. And BCCI was apparently linked to this. This is something we need to go into.
I agree. Let me just say, there is absolutely no disagreement from me. It is something that needs to be gone into, but this is not the place where we're going to be able to resolve it and get at it. And what I've been trying to establish here are really the questions without unfairly making any accusations in it, though the accusations have already been made specifically by the indictment, by Bob Morgenthau, and by your commission. There are certain things that are on the table, and you can't avoid those, and I agree with that. But again, I don't want to go through every detail of them because there is no way that this committee can sort that out. What we're trying to do is show the degree to which BCCI and its method of operation and the personalities and people who are involved with it have in fact created a situation in your country and in other countries where now people are left picking up the pieces and trying to sort it out. And in addition to that, to show the way in which by high-level operations and conversations and meetings, it appears as though they've left many people wondering what happened to the procedures in countries. That is not true only of Peru. It is true in some 60 nations or so, and it is true very much right here in the United States. So we share that. Now, having said that, I have to terminate the part of the inquiry in terms of just the factual part here. We will receive as a committee through staff further documents so that our report capacity and analysis capacity will remain so we can do that. I'd like to ask you one question, if I may, just to, and that is, has your effort to get at this as an investigative body been hindered by the bank secrecy laws? Has that made it difficult to find out what's happened here?
Definitely. We have to state that present legislation favors the criminal, unfortunately. And the action of justice meets many obstacles. The information and the controls which are necessary are not forthcoming in order to, and this allows crime to be committed through legally constituted financial institutions. I think the situation has to be corrected. And I don't want to finish, if this is my final statement, without...
No, I'll come back to you for a final statement. Let me just ask Ms. Flores, would you tell me to what extent Peru is threatened by drug money laundering and drug trafficking, and what has been the impact on Peruvian life of this kind of corporate activity?
Let me tell you with numbers something which is a movement of money regarding with drugs. Peru receives or moves around $2,000 million a year from money coming from drugs. That means that in all our foreign relationships and reestablishing credits and financial relationships with other countries, it is a very big problem to think that we could avoid the money we are taking from drugs. It is around 2,000 million a year of money moving through drugs.
When you say 2,000 million, I think we're probably losing something in the currency conversion here, conceivably.
I'm sorry, $2 million. I'm sorry, excuse me, $2 million.
On this same subject, I want to give you just two examples.
But I need to ask you, I must be fair. I have a neighboring country of yours waiting in the back here, and I really want to ask you for the summary statement, very briefly, if I can. Yes, sir.
Yes, I will conclude saying that on this subject, in the upper Guayaga Valley, there were 4 planes which went to pick up money every week. And it was detected that one citizen who was just a peasant had changed $6 million in just 1 month. And finally, we discovered he was connected to cocaine. And between 1985 and 90, the number of acres went from 60,000 to 25,000 acres, and it's very difficult not to connect all of this thing to increased drug trafficking involvement. We need the cooperation of the authorities of the United States and the authorities of the rest of the world to achieve the goals of our investigation, i.e. justice. We need to recognize the work done by Mr. Morgenthau. We want to be very clear about the shared feelings we have of cooperation with what you are doing. We are getting cooperation from other bodies, but not as much. So we would like to ask for cooperation from the Department of Justice, the Department of the Treasury, the Customs, and other offices in the Federal Reserve, for example, to awake their consciousness so they'll realize that this is a fight for justice, and they cannot use bureaucratic procedures to deny cooperation in this fight for justice, in our desire to defend the rule of law, and which will allow us once and for all to defeat corruption and to get to those who are the first and primary violators of human rights in Peru, which are the terrorists, so that there will be no quarter given them by our government. So I would like to thank you on behalf of my committee. I hope that we will continue this very fluid cooperation that we have had up to now. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to be here. And let me just say that as chairman of the Narcotics Committee, we have sat here in this room and listened to our own Assistant Secretary of State for Narcotic Affairs talk to us about the problems in Peru. I am personally very aware of the difficulties in the Hualaga Valley, the efforts and dangers that are going on there, and the great tensions in your society as a consequence of both the Sendero Luminosa as well as the whole problem of drug trafficking linked to those kinds of efforts. And I simply say to you that banks that involve themselves in laundering that money are as much a part of the problem as anybody else who's involved in the entire line and chain of command. And so you've raised many questions. We haven't answered a whole lot of them here today, and I think one has to say that. But the questions are very legitimate. They're very real, and they need to be addressed. And I think we will proceed here to continue to try to gather information and understand this. It's very clear that BCCI launched one of those offenses that we've heard about in order to secure these funds and deal in Panama and present itself falsely. And I think that that there's a great deal more of the story, though, yet to be told. But I want to thank you very much. We appreciate it. If I could ask the next panel quickly, because we really only have about 20 more minutes here to continue. Thank you very, very much. I will. Yeah. Okay. Can we do the change now? Mr. Castillo? I think, Mr. Castillo, that it's my impression that there is not really a need for you to testify very much, because I think we tried to steer clear of the gravamen of any of the offenses. If you have something that you want to clarify in a couple of minutes, I would be delighted. But it was my sense there's not a great deal to address. Am I incorrect?
I would suggest yes, Mr.
All right, well, I'd be happy. I want to be fair, so if you would raise your hand, raise your right hand, please. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. If you would say, I want this to be as brief as we can make it. Is there something specific with respect to the BCCI that you can add, or to the testimony you've heard that you want to address in fairness? Would you identify yourself, please, for the record?
Señor senador, mi nombre es Jorge del
My name is
Castillo.
Jorge del
Yo
Castillo.
soy diputado en
I am a
Perú,
deputy in Peru
representante
too,
del Partido
representing
Aprista
the
Peruano.
Aprista
También
party,
integro la comisión
and I am a
investigadora
member of the investigating committee in which the other people who preceded me are serving. I want to be very specific here
en honor a
and brief in honoring your
Acá se
request.
hizo una acusación irresponsable.
Irresponsible
Yeah, let me just
accusations
say
have
to
been
you,
made.
no. There were no accusations made here that are not part of the indictment. So, and we're not going to try the indictment here. So if there's something that was said specifically here that is incorrect, then I want you to address that, but we're not going to go into whether or not the indictment is correct or incorrect. Okay.
No me he referido a la acusación de
No, I'm
tal
not talking about Morgenthau's
sino a los
indictment.
comentarios, por ejemplo, en el
I'm
tema del
talking
Mirage,
about
que
the
quiero empezar por
comments
ahí.
on the Mirage business, for instance. Let me start
Fair
there.
enough. Be delighted.
Parece, señor senador, que hay una
It
confusión
seems that there is a confusion
del diputado
here
Rivera
with Deputy Oliveira
involucrar
when he
el
involves
contrato de los
the
Mirage del
contract of the Peruvian
con el
Mirages
BCCI.
with BCCI.
Cuando empezó la sesión,
When the meeting or the session
usted
began,
todavía no se había incorporado,
you had not come in
el
yet,
senador Cranston
but Senator Cranston
leyó algunos
read
documentos
some
que
documents
vinculaban una operación
connecting
de los Mirage
an
de la República
operation,
Argentina
an Argentine
con el BCCI.
operation
No
of the
del Perú.
Mirages with BCCI, not
El
Peru.
Perú compró
Peru bought
a la empresa Marcel Dassault, que es
from
una empresa
Marcel
del Estado,
Dassault, a state-owned enterprise of France,
un total de 26 aviones
a total of
entre los años
26 aircraft
1982
between
y
82
1984.
and 84.
Antes
Before,
de que el doctor Alan García fuera presidente, en esa
Garcia
época gobernaba
was
el Perú el arquitecto
president.
Fernando Belaúnde Terry.
Fernando Belaúnde Terry was
Cuando
president
asumió la
at the time.
presidencia el doctor Alan
When
García,
Dr.
son hechos
Alan
concretos que
Garcia
yo le voy a entregar
became
el documento.
president, and I'm going to give
Él
you
tomó la
a
decisión,
specific
señor
document on
senador,
this.
de
But the
reducir
the issue here on the Mirage
Sí.
is not really the record previously. The issue, as I understood it, was that BCCI facilitated a sale that was made to a Middle Eastern country. Now, that's the issue. Is that true or not true?
Eso no es cierto.
This is not true.
El Perú,
Okay.
el gobierno del Perú,
The government of
bajo
Peru,
su presidente Alan García,
under President Alan Garcia,
el mismo día
the
que
same
tomó
day,
su función, el 28 de julio de
the 28th of July
1985,
1985, as he
anunció
took power,
que siendo el
announced
Perú
that since
un país
Peru
pobre,
was a poor country,
no podía estar gastando en
it could
armas.
not be spending money on
Y por
weapons.
tanto, en lugar de comprar
And therefore,
26
instead of
aviones,
buying 26
él había
planes,
dado las disposiciones
he
para
had
bajar la
given
compra de
orders
aviones.
to reduce the order.
Este fue un
This was
trato, una reestructuración
a
de contrato
restructuring of
hecha
the contract,
directamente
which was done
entre el
directly
gobierno del Perú
between the
y
Peruvian
el gobierno de
government
Francia, y
and the
ahora le voy a
French
dejar los
government. And I am
documentos
going to
firmados
give you the
por
signed
los cancilleres
documents by the
del
foreign
Perú,
ministers of Peru.
Alan Tizón, y por el
Alan
canciller de
Wagner,
Francia,
and
y el
the
Bernard
French
Raymond, sobre la
foreign minister
reestructuración
as well,
del contrato. El Perú,
restructuring this contract.
señor, no
Peru
es un país
is not a country
armamentista ni
which
agresivo, ni
is
que aliente las
aggressive,
guerras entre
nor
otros países.
one
Por
which
tanto, no
encourages
podía revender
wars
aviones.
But,
with
sir,
other countries. Therefore, it would
question-
not resell planes.
Okay, the question is whether or not BCCI was part of a transaction for the sale of weapons. Were Mirages sold? Did Peru sell Mirages to another country?
El Perú no vendió Mirage a otro
Peru
país.
did not
El Perú
sell planes
redujo
to
su
other countries.
contrato,
It
es
cut
una-
its
un
contract
contrato
back
directamente con el gobierno de
in a
Francia,
direct
de
contract with the
gobierno a
French
gobierno,
government,
sin
government to
intermediarios.
government,
Okay.
without any
So it's your
middleman.
testimony then that no planes were ever transferred from Peru to any other country?
Por ningún motivo,
For-
en ningún momento
in no way,
hubo
Okay.
una
at no time.
rescisión
So let me
oficial.
move away from that, because I'm not here, we're not here to get into the fact, I'm not going to be the decider of fact between this. You've stated on the record it didn't happen, they've stated on the record that it did happen, and as I said, a lot of questions have been raised here. The question I ask you is, with respect to BCCI, is there anything that you have heard with respect to BCCI that is factually incorrect or that you can help the committee to understand better? Because the dispute with respect to President Garcia, as I said at the outset, is not for this committee to decide. I've tried to steer the people who testified a moment ago away from any accusations. I'm not here to hear them. We know what's out in public. What I want to know is about BCCI. And so I'm confident that in Peru, this issue is going to be litigated, investigated, decided. It's not here that it should happen. And I have tried to acknowledge that there is a total other side to that. There is no effort here to say that President Garcia did know, did something, or didn't do something. And I accept your statement on its face. There's a controversy. And we can't resolve it. We're not here to resolve it. So if you could help me with respect to BCCI, is there a fact that you can show me by document or otherwise that is incorrect in our current understanding of BCCI's relationship with Peru?
Correcto, señor. Voy a entrar
Yes,
a ese tema y no
I will
voy a intentar no
discuss
salir de
that,
ese
and
tema.
I will try not to get off the
Le voy a
subject.
alcanzar los documentos
I am going to give you the
para concluir el tema
documents
anterior
to
del
conclude the
gobierno de
prior
Francia, sin
subject
Fair enough,
on the
and I will
French,
make
or the
those part of the
government-to-government
record.
contract.
y
Thank
sin
you.
intervención del BCCI para nada. El BCCI,
BCCI,
señor presidente, señor senador, llegó
Mr.
al
Chairman,
Perú en
came to Peru
1984.
in 1984.
Probablemente
Probably
sorprendió en el Perú,
it was
como en 70 países del mundo,
a source of
la
surprise
buena fe
in
de
Peru,
muchísima gente.
as in 60 other countries as well, how much good faith people had.
Como usted sabe, la costumbre
As you
parece
know,
ese banco, como cualquier banco,
it
quiere
seems
penetrar en un país,
that when
vincularse a
any
grupos
bank wants to get into a
importantes,
country,
poderes
it
del
wants
país.
to get into touch and contact with important groups of people in the country. And in March of 1984, BCCI in Peru asked for authorization from the Superintendency of Banks and Insurance to set up a branch. So you will see the level of reliability that a bank, a very apparently very solid bank, seemed to have at that time. BCCI, to ask for this authorization, asked for and got the legal advice of a very important law firm in Peru. And here in exhibit number 1 that I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you a sealed copy dated March 14, 1984, from the superintendency showing that BCCI asked for permission to set up a branch. And it says that its legal domicile will be the law office of Sterling, Arias, and Davis and Associates, which is a very well-known law firm. Dr. Sterling, who is a person that all of us respect and cannot possibly be suspected of anything illegal. He is a member of Dr. Lunes Flores' party and is the president of the Peruvian Senate. He's beyond reproach. This is exhibit number 1. In 1984, the superintendency, in a document in November, asked the central bank to process the approval. I am giving you a list of all of the central bank staff members from 1980 to 1990. Here there is a very interesting person who was the general manager of the central bank between 1980 and 84 until October of 84. Remember that BCCI's request came in March, and he was there until October. They say in Lima, and this is a saying, a speculation, I recognize, that this same person, the general manager, was the promoter of BCCI in Peru. This person is called Brian Jensen Rullo. In 1984, Mr. Brian Jensen Rullo resigned from this post at the central bank, and he moved to Miami. And in Miami, he was named manager of BCCI. So if anyone knows about the links of Peru with BCCI, it is Brian Jensen, because he had been general manager of the central bank and because he was later a Miami manager of BCCI. Brian Jensen, until yesterday, was representative in Peru, named by the Minister of Economy, Carlos Bologna, the representative of Peru to the World Bank. Yesterday, though, the president of Peru, Alberto Fujimori, dismissed him from this position when he learned of evidence that this person, Brian Jensen, was allegedly a link to BCCI. And he lives in Washington now, and I think it would be interesting for you to hear his testimony. He was general manager starting January 19, 1981 until October 1984. When BCCI already had been working 6 or 7 months, or had been working for 6 or 7 months to try to set up its branch in Peru. The branch in Peru was approved by the director of the central bank February 1st, 1985. We are still talking about the prior administration before Dr. Garcia.
Can you get into the 1986 and 7 stage where the transaction began in terms of the credit line?
Yes, I just want to read 2 lines of the director's report of February 1985. This board of directors is made up of very serious people. I think all of them have impeccable reputations in the country, and I am sure that they were all surprised, as Dr. Sterling was, and as many other people who are honest and of good faith must have been. The report said, or the agreement said, the board, feeling that the opening of a foreign bank at this point shows confidence in our country, and taking into account that this is a bank which is presently one of the most important in the world, and nothing has been found against it, the board has decided to act in favor of the request. This same report includes an authorization of the superintendency, and I am including the documents, the official documents which appeared in the press in Lima, establishing this branch. Later, this branch was not actually set up, but all of these steps were taken by the public authorities of Peru so that it could have been set up. In 1986, April 1st, 1986, and I am sending the text of the Board of Directors report, the decision was taken by the Board of the Central Bank to establish a corresponding relationship and deposits, and I don't want to refer to more details because Mr. Yaque has explained all of this very clearly indeed. It was the director of BCCI in July that said it was necessary to revise some factors or some areas.
I hate to interrupt you here, but as you know, I promised I would give you an opportunity to respond to the prior panel. I can't go through another entire panel of testimony separately now. If you want to do that at some point, we can talk about it, but I've got to ask you to strictly, I mean, you know, we could go through the entire history from a different perspective, and we'll sit here and sort it out. I think the key question is, and let me come to some key questions. It has been asserted by the investigative team as they have spoken that there are irregularities in the way that the line of credit was extended, and that there are significant questions in Peru. Leaving President Garcia, let's leave the president completely out of this. Let's assume there's no President Garcia, there's nobody. Just the way BCCI worked when suddenly the government made a decision that it needed some credit and went to Panama. Now, why did it go to Panama? Was there something about the way BCCI worked? Do you find that? Or do you think BCCI is a terrific bank with no problems?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to refer to the Peruvian Constitution, and I'm going to leave you a copy of it. But there it says that the central bank is an autonomous body. It does not depend on the executive branch.
I accept that.
This is
so
very
is
important.
it, but answer my question. I mean, I take it that what you're saying is that the BCCI relationship was bad, but that somebody else had something to do with that, and that not the president. Is that what you're saying to us?
Claro. Los únicos
The
funcionarios
only officers responsible for the BCCI matter were the members of the board,
ninguna otra persona más.
no one else.
El día de ayer en Lima,
Yesterday
Okay, the members
in
of the
Lima,
board of the Federal Reserve are responsible, correct? Is that what you're saying?
efectivamente, señor.
All right.
yes, sir.
Was BCCI a good bank to deal with or not? Yes or no?
Señor, yo no conozco esos antecedentes.
I don't know this background.
Yo he venido,
I
con
have come
el objetivo, como usted conoce,
with the purpose, as you know,
impedir
of
que se hiciera en su presencia.
stopping,
Usted no lo ha permitido. Usted
and
no
you
lo ha
have
permitido.
not allowed this to happen, fortunately,
Vinculaciones o
but
nexos
stopping
indebidos.
undue links
Yo
to
no
be drawn
juzgo
here.
al BCCI ni a
I
favor
don't
ni
Fair enough.
judge
Well, if you
BCCI
agree
pro
with
or
me-
con.
Fair enough, and I appreciate your comment, because I wanted to bend over backwards not to have any linkages here. This is not a place where we're looking for, you know, as I have said, to try to sort out the gravamen of the accusations. It's a place where we want to understand people's view of BCCI. Now, from your perspective, can you share with the committee a view of BCCI? If you don't have knowledge of that, then I will make part of the record any clarification you have of any comment to which you object. But I don't want to take the time now because of the gentleman from Argentina who's waiting, and I want to get some of that on the table because it's important as to Argentina's experience with BCCI.
Señor senador,
Senator,
aquí se ha comentado que el
it's
fiscal
been said
Morgenthau
here
habría
that
declarado
Mr.
un
Morgenthau
nexo entre el
allegedly
presidente García
made a
y
link
el BCCI.
between President
En el tema
Garcia
de unos
and
presuntos
BCCI
sobornos a funcionarios,
regarding
cosa que en mi país
presumed
esta
bribes.
declaración ha empezado una investigación.
And we have begun an investigation in
Pero yo
Peru
tengo
on
y le
this.
estoy dejando
But I have, and I am leaving you,
un cable de F publicado en un diario de Nueva
a
York.
cable, an
que fue el
EFE
único que ha
cable,
hecho
which was the
referencia
only one that referred to a question of this sort. And this press release says,
Si el expresidente del Perú, Alan
asked
García,
if President Alan Garcia
en Perú,
was being investigated in Peru regarding his links with BCCI, if this was connected to the bribes, Morgenthau said no. I leave this with you because there's no evidence that Morgenthau said anything different from this.
All right, let me just say to you, Mr. Castillo, I respect that. And the committee accepts what we have heard today completely neutrally with respect to President Garcia. And I want the press to understand that, and I make it very clear for the record. As far as we are concerned, that is outside of this committee at this time. It is between the people of Peru and its own government and its own processes for determining that, and it is between Mr. Morgenthau and his indictment process, which is totally separate from here. But what I want to simply try to understand, unless there is documentary evidence of something, and then obviously we're going to accept that. But at the moment, we're really trying to get a picture of the questions that have been raised by this. The mere fact that this is happening in Peru is a fallout from BCCI. That is, in effect, one of the repercussions of this. The fact that there was a soft credit line, if you will, with an imbalance in the amount of credit for the amount of cost. The fact that it had to go to Panama, and BCCI was so prepared to help a country find a way around the laws, and went to Panama and had secret accounts and so forth, raises the very kinds of issues that we're trying to raise. And while nothing is dispositive here of any of those issues, that's what we're trying to show. In a sense, your very conflict is itself a statement about BCCI and the kind of operation that it has left behind it. And this is the wake, if you will. This is the fallout. Those banking institutions or those institutions that perform above the board and so forth don't have these kinds of accusations flying around them and don't leave these kinds of question marks, hopefully. So I think that it has served its purpose of leaving in people's minds the sense that it came in, offered itself where other banks wouldn't go, provided an opportunity to get around the legitimate credit interests of the rest of the banking world, took advantage of a country's plight in that respect, made money off it, and left a lot of chaos in its wake. And as I say, nothing here is dispositive of any of that, but I genuinely want you to feel that this record is open to you, and if there's any comment that you feel you need to make publicly because putting it in the record is not sufficient, I want to give you a last opportunity to do that now. If there's something you think that ought to be said, if you could just, if you could take one last moment.
Muy breve.
I'll be very brief.
Se ha hecho bien en no comentar ni aceptar un comentario
It was very good not to accept comments on presumed or alleged bribes by BCCI, not to these officers mentioned by Mr. Morgenthau, but having to do with the president having accounts in BCCI. In your power, you have records from all the banks. Without exception, all the banks mentioned in the reports of Kroll and Bellar, proving that these accounts don't exist. Not only are these from BCCI, but these are from the Sunbelt Bank of Dallas, the Société Générale from France, the Société Santander from Spain.
Putting in the record things that never came out previously. I mean, none of this was talked about.
Sí, por eso.
Yes.
Pero, señor senador,
Senator,
no se han hablado acá.
They haven't been talked about here, but in the press.
Well, I understand, but we're not here to try to sift out what's been out in the press. And I think the other side very respectfully heeded to my earlier caution. So I think it's really fair not to make this committee now the recipient of any rebuttal of something that hasn't been set forth. So on that note, I would like to, again, I leave the record open for you to submit some of this, but I'm not going to receive it at this point in time, if that's fair. Does that?
De acuerdo, señor senador, voy a concluir.
Very well, I will conclude.
Efectivamente. Esos son temas refutados en otras
These are
instancias, en otros niveles.
matters to be refuted in
Yo
other
lo que quiero
bodies.
señalar
What I would like to
es de
say,
que usted me preguntó mi
you
impresión
asked me what my
sobre este tema
impression
del
was
BCCI.
about this whole
Mi
BCCI
impresión
business.
general,
My
si
general
yo hago
impression,
un juicio de valor sobre ese
without
banco,
admitting
que
any
veo que
value
es un
judgment
banco
about this
con
bank, which I
múltiples evidencias de
see
corrupción
is a bank with
en muchas
multiple
partes del mundo.
evidence of corruption in
Pero
many
mi
parts of the
impresión
world, but my
es que cuando
impression
llega al
is
Perú,
that when it
en
went to
los años
Peru
84
in
y después
1984
cuando
and
estuve en el
later
86,
in
esas
86,
evidencias que
these,
hoy las tenemos a la vista no
this
eran
evidence that we have
conocidas.
now was not known
El BCCI
at that time.
trabajaba en Londres hasta hace 15
BCCI
días.
worked in London until 2 weeks
Ha
ago.
tenido oficinas
It's had
hasta el año
offices
anterior, me
until
parece, aquí en el
the
propio
last
Estados
year here
Unidos,
in the United States, if I'm not
en el Perú.
mistaken, in Peru,
en que llegó y sorprendió,
where it came
pero
and
que los funcionarios del Banco Central
surprised people, but the
En
people of
1987,
the central
de
bank
motu
in
propio, no por imposición
1987,
de nadie,
on their
tomaron la decisión de reducir
own
los
initiative,
depósitos de
decided to
BCCI.
reduce
Creo que fue
BCCI, their deposits in BCCI.
decisión
But I
adelantada
think
y
this
premonitoria
was
de
a
lo que hoy estamos
decision
viendo del mundo.
which is sort of
Creo que esa es una decisión que debe
indicative of what
apreciarse.
we are seeing
Y
now.
cómo
And I
aquí se ha
think
querido hacer
that
coincidir
here
supuestas
there's been an
reuniones
attempt to
de
have
los
coincide
presidentes
certain
con
meetings
gente del
held by the
BCCI.
president with
Digo supuestas porque no
BCCI
están
people.
acreditadas.
I
Se
say
menciona un tal
supposed
Oscar
meetings
Patrón,
because they
nadie
haven't
lo
been
conoce.
proven. Nobody knows who this Rizo
No es
Patron even
funcionario del
is.
gobierno
He's not an
peruano.
officer or
No hay
an
ninguna
official of the
vinculación. No sé
Peruvian
quién será
government.
Rizo Patrón.
I don't know who Oscar Rizo
Calvo,
Patron even
no
is.
sé quién será
Calvo,
Calvo,
I don't know
que
who
son
he is
mencionados
either.
en-
These people have been
en la
mentioned.
declaración.
Well, let me just say that it's very obvious that BCCI has left investigators in Peru a lot to do, investigators in London a lot to do, investigators in New York and Washington and all around the world. And it's too bad that so much investigative effort is going to have to be consumed by this one enterprise, but obviously it is. I want to thank you very much for also taking the time, and I respect enormously as a fellow parliamentarian your efforts in this, and if there is any further statement you want to submit to the staff here, we'd be happy to receive it. If I could ask the last panel to come forward, I would appreciate it very much.
Solo quiero agradecerle su gentileza.
I just want to thank you for your
Quiero
courtesy
agradecerle la oportunidad que me ha dado de
and
exponer,
for
porque
the
creo que ha
opportunity
actuado usted
you've
con mucha
given me
justicia.
Thank you.
to speak, and I think
Appreciate
you've
it.
acted with great justice.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that comment very much. Muchas gracias. Did we get the last? Thank you. Sorry to be so long.
Okay, that's Raul Alcalá is a former Secretary of Defense.
Thank you very much. This is the book. Okay. Thank you very, very much. All right. See you later. Thanks. Somewhere. Where are they? Yeah, I do. I have them right here. Here they are.
Okay, and then there's another list for Mr. Alcalá.
Where is it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Glad to see you.
Thank you very much.
$2 billion. I'll clarify it. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Take care. Thank you. Where did those go, Jonathan?
Alcalá was the former Secretary of Defense, which is the sub-ministerial position in the Defense Ministry, and he was also Deputy Foreign Minister under Raul Alfonsín. Jesus Rodriguez was Alfonsín's last economy minister. Jesus has got the beard.
Okay. Gentlemen, if you could please take your places there. I ask you If you would stand and, which one is what? Okay. Okay. Would you, sir, would you please stand and do you swear, would you raise your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Would you state your name, please, for the record?
Sí, como no, mi nombre es Jesús
Yes,
Rodríguez.
I am
Soy
Jesus
diputado de la
Rodriguez.
Nación
I am a
de la
deputy
República
of
Argentina.
the Argentine Congress.
Mi nombre es Raúl Alconada
My name
Sempe.
is Raúl
He sido
Alconada
secretario
Sempe.
de
I
Defensa
was
y
Secretary of
secretario de Asuntos
Defense
Especiales del
and
Ministerio de Relaciones
Secretary
Exteriores.
for Special Projects of the Foreign Ministry of Argentina.
Would you please describe briefly for the committee the history and the significance of the involvement by BCCI in Argentina?
Como no, señor presidente, en honor
Yes,
al
sir.
tiempo trataremos
To
de
save
hacerlo
time, we will try to
brevemente.
be brief.
Del señor Faraón se tiene conocimiento que llegó al país por
We
primera
know
vez
that
el día
Mr.
27 de mayo del año
Faraón came
1981.
to Argentina in 1981, May
El 18 de
17th.
noviembre de
That the 18th of November
1986,
1986, the central bank of our country authorized the transfer of 28% of the capital and votes of a financial holding company, property of the company Rio de la Plata. This company was having economic difficulties, and today its officers are being tried, and these trials have been going on since 1985 approximately. Then, on November 2nd, 1987, an authorization of the Central Bank of Argentina was given to this financial company to increase its capital and to acquire, and it became, to acquire more stock, and it became BCCI.
What year, when did it become BCCI in Argentina?
November 2nd, 1987.
Now, did BCCI or Mr. Faraón, to your knowledge, seek political influence through their investments in Argentina?
I really don't know, Mr. Chairman, but I could refer to some statements that Mr. Faraón made in trying to become an Argentine citizen. At that time, he said that he had been working for 22 years in business. He had graduated from Harvard Business School and was on the staff of Harvard Business School as an expert, and that he was an industrialist with much experience in the Middle East and other countries of the world, that he worked in cement, petrochemicals, shipbuilding, oil, insurance, hotels in the United States and in other countries. He said that he was a majority shareholder in Intergroup Development Company in accordance with information from a specialized magazine, Building, Design and Construction of 1987. He was number 27 in rank of all companies. He said that he had offices in Dallas and Florida, and BCCI was a bank originating in Luxembourg with branches in 72 countries, including the United States, and that he had activities in the Centrus Bank in Miami and in the Central Trust Bank in California. Now, regarding your concrete question,
What year was it that he said all these things? When did all these things come out?
according to our information, about 1988.
But he was involved prior to that. Was he not?
Él dice tener 22 años de
He
experiencia
said that
comercial.
he had been working in business for 22 years before that.
Now, what role has the Argentine Parliament had in investigating BCCI's involvement in Argentina?
Usted sabe, señor presidente,
You know,
en
Mr.
Argentina,
Chairman,
el
Argentina,
Congreso
the
es uno de
Congress
los
of
poderes de la
Argentina is one
República
of the branches of
y
government,
hay distintos
and there are a
antecedentes
number of
que
different
obran
kinds
en
of
el Congreso de la
background
Nación
that
que
the Congress
nos gustaría
has at
poner a
its
disposición de la
disposal,
Comisión.
different kinds of documentation that
Se
I would like to
refieren
give you.
básicamente
This
a
documentation
lo
refers to the following.
El 2 de marzo de
March 2nd,
1990, hay un pedido de
1990, there
informes
was
al
a
Poder Ejecutivo
request to the Executive Branch for
formulado por el
information
señor
made
diputado
by
Felgueras en
Deputy
relación a
Filgueras
información
regarding
internacional de
information of an
actividades
international
ilegales
nature
del
regarding
BCCI.
illegal activities of
El
BCCI.
día 31 de mayo de
On May 31st,
1990, hay otro
1990,
pedido
there
de
is another
informes
request for
formulado por los señores
information
diputados
by
Tello
Deputies
Rosas y
Tello
Álvarez
Rosas
Guerrero,
and Alvarez Guerrero,
también en relación a las
also in
actividades del
connection
BCCI
to BCCI
y
activities
una
and
industria, un establecimiento hotelero que
the
estaba siendo
establishment of a
construido en Buenos
hotel
Aires.
which was being built in Buenos
El día
Aires.
13 de julio del 90,
July 13th,
el señor diputado
1990,
Barak y yo mismo presentamos otro pedido de informes
another
en
deputy and
relación
I
a esas
presented
vinculaciones.
reports regarding
Y el
these
19 de
linkages,
julio
and
del
in
90,
July 19th, 1990,
adicionalmente, otro pedido de
additionally,
informes
another request for
conjuntamente con el señor
of
diputado
information
Felgueras
was
en relación a las vinculaciones
submitted
del BCCI
by
con
Mr.
el Hotel
Filgueras
Hyatt que
regarding
estaba en
the
construcción
connection
en la ciudad
with
de Buenos Aires.
Hotel Hyatt being
Debo
built
decir
at
que
that time in
desgraciadamente
Buenos Aires.
ninguno de esos
Unfortunately,
pedidos de
none of
informes
these
fue
requests for
contestado
information
por
was responded to
el Poder Ejecutivo.
by the executive branch of our
En
government.
estos momentos
But is this in conjunction with BCCI?
sí, señor presidente,
Yes,
porque nosotros
Because
conocíamos
we
que a
knew
través del mecanismo de
that
capitalización de la deuda,
through the
el BCCI estaba
capitalization
invirtiendo en
process,
Buenos Aires en la
BCCI
construcción
was
del hotel de la cadena
investing
Hyatt.
in a Hyatt hotel, which was being built in Argentina. And from a newspaper report in La Nación in October of 1988, we knew about the accusation against BCCI in the United States. And we had at our disposal the analysis of this committee, Senator Pell's analysis regarding money laundering.
What time period, Mr. Rodriguez, are you now referring to?
Estamos hablando del año
We're
90.
talking about the year 1990.
Más recientemente, señor
More recently
presidente,
than that,
el
Mr.
17 de
Chairman,
mayo del año
May
1991,
17,
el
1991,
presidente de nuestro bloque,
the president
señor
of
diputado
our
Carlos Lasky, juntamente
block,
con
our
otros
electoral
diputados,
block, and
presentó a la
other
consideración de la Cámara la
deputies
creación de una
submitted
comisión
the
investigadora
idea to the
con el
Congress
objeto
of
de
setting up
analizar
a
el
commission to
narcotráfico, las
analyze
organizaciones vinculadas con este tipo
drug
de
trafficking
delitos, sus modos y mecanismos
and
de
the
acción y
modus
consolidación
operandi
de la
of
sociedad y
the
el
way
Estado.
they work and their effects on society and the state.
Que con el objetivo de ser breve,
In
señor
order to be
presidente, y no-
brief,
y para
Mr.
no abusar
Chairman,
del
and not to
tiempo, si usted me
abuse
permite,
your
me gustaría
patience, I
citar muy
would like to
brevemente
very
algunos de los
briefly quote
fundamentos de la
some of the
constitución de este país.
bases used for setting up this congressional committee.
And this congressional committee was for investigating BCCI?
Para investigar todo
To
el
investigate
mecanismo
everything
de
having to
funcionamiento que
do
podía
with
tener el negocio de la droga en la Argentina.
drugs
Muy brevemente,
in
señor
Argentina.
La urgencia de la constitución de la
urgency
comisión
of setting up the committee,
a nuestro modo de ver está fundado
we thought
en
or
la
think
necesidad
is
de
based on the
clarificar ante
need
la
to
opinión
clarify
pública
to public
las
opinion
distintas responsabilidades,
the various
sobre todo de los
responsibilities
funcionarios
and
que puedan aparecer
liabilities
involucrados.
of various
De no
officials
hacerlo,
involved.
la
If this is
credibilidad
not
del
done, the
gobierno y aún
credibility
del
of the
sistema
whole
democrático
government and
se
even the
verán seriamente
democratic
afectados.
system will be jeopardized.
En segundo lugar,
Secondly,
la historia del
the
narcotráfico
history
mostró
of
que la
drug trafficking has
infiltración en los
shown that
gobiernos de las redes de
infiltration
traficantes
of
fue un
drug
paso
trafficking
decisivo en su
rings
expansión y consolidación.
into two government has been a decisive step in their growth. This is not true in Argentina, but we could imagine the consequences if this were to happen in the future. Third, the need to draw up policies which will allow us to act coherently and consistently throughout the government at the various levels to get information which is now being done in a very disjointed way. Four, the advisability, Mr. Chairman, to stop intervention of foreign bodies, which would be tantamount to admitting that the national bodies are impotent. Five, to allow a multidisciplinary and multi-party report to be set up. And six, to see how much penetration there has been into the drug enforcement bodies and police bodies in Argentina. The government and most of the parties in Argentina find the setting up of this committee a positive thing.
Now, that committee was set up when?
Let me be clear. We asked that the committee be set up May 17th, 1991.
1991, all right. Now, prior to that, had you had any contact, in the course of your parliamentary efforts, had any contact with BCCI?
No, señor presidente,
No, personal contacts of no kind at all. But I did have the desire of clarifying episodes which had come out in the press, and that was the reason why we had been asking for information. The President, in a report published in the Nación newspaper, talked about the construction of the Hyatt Hotel, which was being built in Buenos Aires. This happened in 1990, and this was an article which came out in La Nación, which is a newspaper in Buenos Aires.
Now, the efforts that you are currently making to investigate, Mr. Rodriguez, is the government, are you meeting with cooperation in this effort?
In Buenos Aires or in la República Argentina.
In Buenos Aires or in Argentina, there are many intensive judicial investigations going on.
En la práctica.
In practice,
these judicial investigations that are going on all surround BCCI at the current moment?
No.
No.
No, señor presidente. Hay algunas vinculadas.
Some are connected with a Spanish suit having to do with the trafficking,
narcotráfico,
drug trafficking,
está siendo investigado en la República Argentina por la jueza
being investigated by Judge Servini de Curia in Argentina. Also involved here is BCCI. This week, there was a seizure of the BCC offices in the city of Buenos Aires. You understand, sir, that on this subject we can only say that we respect the functioning of justice and our desire that this situation will be clarified very soon. And finally, to say to you, adding some information, that our party in the Chamber of Deputies has initiated a political suit against the judge who was handling this case. Servini de Curia is her name.
Now, Mr. Rodriguez, one of the things that you've been involved with in your career is the effort to try to open up the stock ownership process and in other words, to have more open system of knowing who owns what and moves what. Is that correct?
Sí, señor presidente. Nosotros, juntamente con otros legisladores,
together with some other legislators, are authors of a law which was promulgated in Argentina, providing for giving names or putting names on all stocks of all corporations in order to identify clearly who are the owners of each of these companies.
Legislación comparada de muchos otros países.
Following the comparative legislation of many other countries as well. Unfortunately, one of the initiatives of President Menem's government in August, September of 1990 was to derogate this law or cancel it, which makes it more difficult to investigate or to find out exactly who is the owner of each one of the companies existing in Argentina.
Now, does that also frustrate the capacity to learn more about BCCI?
Dificulta saber, por ejemplo,
it makes it more difficult to find out, for instance, if the shareholders of BCCI or the members of the board of BCCI Argentina are also owners of stock in other companies in Argentina.
So is that a frustration to the investigative effort to determine the BCCI track?
Es una dificultad adicional,
It's an additional difficulty, Mr. Chairman, but I wanted to be absolutely clear that this was not the reason used by President Menem to produce or to cancel that law to which I referred.
What is the status of BCCI in Argentina now?
Muy sintéticamente, señor presidente, una
Very
aclaración previa.
concisely, let me say first, never did the Central Bank of Argentina have deposits of its international reserves in BCCI, never.
Además, debo decirle
I
que
also must add
durante el año
that during
1990,
1990, the Central Bank of Argentina, in its analyses of the regulatory practices in the BCCI branch, it reached an agreement whereby the branch would cease all operations in Argentina. Toward the end of May 1991, this subsidiary was not operating any longer, having closed its branches. Finally, BCCI Argentina was totally closed July 30th, 1991. And as I said,
What were the reasons
this week, I don't have the exact information, Mr. Chairman, because I don't have the report of the Central Bank in order to answer this question properly.
Do you recall what was said in the press with respect to the closing?
No, señor.
No, I don't.
Si usted me disculpa, señor presidente,
If
me
you'll
acotan aquí
forgive
que
me,
el
they're
BCCI
saying here
pidió su
that
propio cierre
BCCI
de
asked
sus
for its
actividades en
own
Argentina.
closure. It asked itself that its activities be closed in Argentina.
We're on the back of a vote here. We're going to take our last recess. We'll complete this in total when I return in about 10 minutes from now. We'll stand in recess for 10 minutes. All right, gentlemen, the hearing will come back to order. We need to try to proceed very rapidly. I apologize for that, but I have a banking wrap-up, and they're trying to get the banking bill out, and I've been here all morning and therefore need to try to get over there. So we will have to truncate this a little bit, and I ask your understanding on that. Mr. Rodriguez, do you know, share with the committee, if you will, what the status of money laundering and drugs are in Argentina right now?
It's difficult to answer that, Mr. Chairman, especially because precisely on the matter of drug trafficking, an investigation, a judicial investigation is opening just today. In addition,
Well, is it known to be a problem in the country? I take it if there's a judicial commission that's opening, it's a problem.
indeed, it is a problem, and so much so that I read you the bases for our party's coalition asking for this commission. It's not that we are trying to interfere with the work of the justice system, but because we think it is necessary to instill in collective consciousness and in everyone's mind the political and social implications of drugs, and thus the power of drugs. Mr. Chairman.
Now, yes. Mr. Semper.
Just one brief clarification. During Dr. Alfonsin's presidency, when I was in the foreign ministry, we had a major concern with introducing the whole subject of drug trafficking in Argentina, because thank God until some time ago, Argentina was not affected either as a consumer or producing country, and it was starting to be used as a transit country. One of the serious problems is that society sometimes is not aware of the tragedy that occurs. And we think that we have nothing to do with it. The effects that foreign investigations are having, investigations in Argentina now are useful for us to become aware of how serious this is. That is why Deputy Rodriguez was talking about investigating a phenomenon that we do not want to consolidate itself, or to have time to consolidate itself, because if we don't do something now, it will be too late.
Mr. Sempe, I agree with that, and let me just ask you now that you've spoken up. When you worked in the foreign and defense ministries, and you're a former Secretary of Defense for Argentina, what was the policy of the government with respect to arms sales?
Sí, la Argentina no es un país productor de armamentos importantes.
An important weapons-producing country. We produce secondary or medium-sized weapons, but the main principle guiding us was not to sell weapons to any country involved or potentially involved in any conflict with another country. We did not sell to either one, either side. Secondly, we did not sell weapons to countries subject to doubt about their international policy. That meant that despite great economic problems, and despite the fact that we needed to make such sales of planes or ships, we did not do so because the countries that wanted to buy were countries that were fighting each other. And when these operations are conducted, they have to appear in the budget as possible income. In other words, the Parliament takes cognizance of weapon sales whenever they occur.
just as we do. Did the government at some time seek to sell its fleet of Mirage aircraft?
Sí,
Yes.
el gobierno, perdón, del presidente Alfonsín o el actual gobierno.
You're talking about President Alfonsin's government or this one?
Well, I'm saying normally, when you were Secretary, when you were Defense, if a sale was to take place, how would that transaction have been affected?
Primero era una
First,
decisión política que
a
debía
political
tomarse
decision had to
de
be
común acuerdo
taken
el Ministerio de Defensa,
by the
el Ministerio de Relaciones
Defense
Exteriores,
and Foreign
el Ministerio de
Ministries
Economía.
and the Economics
Un comité
Ministry.
especial formado por
A special
tres
committee
secretarios de
made up
Estado,
of 3
que
state
vienen a ser en la Argentina
secretaries,
viceministros,
which would
y
be
eran los
deputy
que
ministers,
autorizaban
and
una operación
they
tanto de compra
had to
como de venta.
authorize both sales
Cuando
and
había una
purchase
operación de
operations. And when
venta,
there was a sales,
era una secretaría especial
it
dentro
was
del
a
Ministerio de
special
Defensa,
committee
la que
within
se
the Defense
encargaba de
Ministry
la
which dealt
operación,
with the
encargando de
operation,
agente del propio ministerio
having
a que hiciera
people
la venta.
in the ministry
Pero
carry out
durante
the
nuestro
sale.
gobierno,
But during
ante la
our
pregunta
ministry, answering the question
y la
now,
afirmación de un senador que habló hoy a la
and
mañana
a
por
statement
California,
by a senator of
durante el
California
gobierno
this
del
morning,
presidente Alfonsín no se
during
vendió
President
ni se
Alfonsin's
puso en venta,
administration,
los aviones Mirage
the
a los que
Mirage
hace referencia.
planes were not offered for sale. The Mirage sales reference was made this morning.
And when did you leave government service as Minister of Defense?
En defensa, dejé mi cargo
I
en el mes de
left
mayo de
Defense in May
1988,
of
pero el
88,
cargo que luego continué de
but
secretario de
then I
Asuntos Especiales
continued as
del Ministerio de
Secretary
Relaciones
of
Exteriores,
Special
que era también el responsable por
issues
el estudio
in the Foreign
de la venta de
Ministry, which
armamentos,
also
lo
had to
dejé
do
el
with
8
the
de julio de 1989.
sales of arms, and that I left in July of 89.
And after you left, did you learn some information of such a sale of military weapons that was to take place of the Mirage?
A través de los medios de comunicación, ¿no? Y a través de
through the
los
press,
contactos con hombres de
through
las Fuerzas
contacts
Armadas,
with
incluso con
the
hombres de
armed
la Fuerza
forces
Aérea,
people, Air Force
supongo que
people.
de haberse intentado vender
I
una cantidad
suppose
para la
that
Argentina
if
importante
an
de aviones,
attempt was made to
hubiéramos
sell
recibido la
that
información.
many planes, such an important number of planes for Argentina, we would have known about it or heard about it.
Well, what did you learn anything about BCCI and any kind of sale?
No, durante
No,
nuestro gobierno,
during
durante
our government
estos
and
2
during
años
these
del
2
nuevo
years
gobierno,
of the new government,
no tuve ningún
I had
conocimiento
no
de que el banco
knowledge
estuviera
that this
directamente
bank
vinculado.
was directly connected to this.
Mr. Sempe, you showed some documents earlier today regarding BCCI's transaction of some weapons of Mirage, et cetera. Have you seen those?
Hoy a la mañana,
This morning,
aquí,
here,
he visto una
I
copia
saw a
de unos,
copy
documentos
of
vinculados
some
a
documents
aviones Mirage,
connected to Mirage
con
aircraft,
fotografía y con
with
análisis de
photographs
aviones,
and
con horas de vuelo,
analysis
etcétera,
of
etcétera.
planes with
Papeles
flight
anónimos.
hours, etc.
No
These
puedo
were anonymous
atestiguar sobre
papers.
su
I can't
autenticidad ni sobre pertenencia.
say anything about where they came from or who their authorship. I don't know what the origin of these documents might be. I was told that they were found in an office of that bank, in the Miami offices, but I don't know that these are authentic or what their origin might be.
Let me just say for the record that these are documents provided to us by BCCI in response to our subpoena. And they speak specifically about Mirage 3CB, general description of airplanes, manufactured in France, modified to the Argentine Air Force requirements following years of combat experience. Is there any particular reason why documents involving Mirage aircraft from Argentina would be in the hands of BCCI?
Yes, this is a question that I'm asking myself as well. If it was Air Force documentation, in the cases that I've known about in the Defense Ministry, these are papers which have the letterhead of the Defense Ministry or the Air Force or the combined chiefs of staff. I suppose these are papers that this bank had. I don't doubt that, but I repeat that I don't know anything about their origin or how the bank came into possession of such details.
Well, do you know anything about whether or not in the last few years, there was an attempt to try to make this kind of transaction through BCCI?
No, desconozco.
No, I don't know anything about that.
On page 31, or I think it's 31, 35 of these documents regarding ground support equipment, it is suggested that the Argentine Air Force will provide engine test cell portable. On another page, it says Argentine Air Force will provide necessary contractor to support intermediate level component repair until full capability is established in customer country. Costs will be negotiated directly with contractor representative. With respect to pilot training, in any and all training in Argentina, customer country spares and equipment will be provided to support the training effort. Total cost to be negotiated separately. This seems to be indicative of a transaction which was being brokered through the bank, and I wonder if you can shed any light as former defense minister on how that might be, given the procedures that you've described that existed for the sale of weapons. Obviously, as a former defense minister, this seems to be a transaction you're unaware of. Is there any way in which this kind of sale could be carried on secretly without your knowledge?
No.
No.
Ventas
Sales
en ignorancia del Ministerio de Defensa.
without the defense minister knowing from 1983 on, it was impossible because it was only the defense ministry that authorized such sales. What does exist, and I think this is a general problem throughout all countries, is that there are countries that have arms, countries that need arms, and the famous middlemen crop up, the brokers, the sales agents. And these are the people that try to match the buyer and the seller. And sometimes these people just crop up spontaneously, not at the instructions of either the buyer or the seller. They just try to look for such a deal. This is what may have happened. It may have happened that the bank was trying to find information in order to go out and find a buyer and get the buyer interested
Well,
in dealing with the seller.
If the reference here is to Mirage aircraft that have been modified to the Argentine Air Force requirements, and that is what it says right here. It says Mirage 3CB, general description, manufactured by Avion Marcel Dassault, France, modified to Argentine Air Force requirements. And down here in the bottom is a notation, 22 units of aircraft plus adequate spare parts, including 6 spare engines, CF at a price of $110 million. Is this the first time you ever saw this document today?
Sí, hoy o no.
Yes, this morning.
Have you ever heard discussion of the sale of 22 units of aircraft by Argentina through the Bank of Credit Commerce International for $110 million?
No, hasta el día de hoy.
No, not until today.
And there's been that has never surfaced in any way in your experience in Argentina itself?
Efectivamente.
Is
That's right.
is there a way in which 22 aircraft could be sold and shipped out of Argentina through a bank like this under the circumstances that appear in this kind of document?
Me animaría a afirmar que
I would dare to affirm that the economic situation of Argentina is impossible because the volume of the $110 million is a substantial amount for the work of the Treasury and the Finance Ministry. This amount of money could not have gone unnoticed, and from the military point of view, this could not have gone unnoticed, that 22 planes were missing, because this is a substantial percentage of the total number of aircraft that the Argentine Air Force possesses.
Well, it could be that the transaction didn't in effect get consummated. It may have been in some kind of shopping stage where no customer was found. I don't know. How do we know this one?
Es una posibilidad.
That's a possibility. That is a possibility, as I said before, that they were looking for somebody to then make a deal. But as far as the Argentine government,
I'm sorry.
yes? But I would like to stress that as far as the prior Argentine government, and as far as I know about this Argentine government, these planes were not sold or placed for sale. What is possible, though, is that this bank, as a broker or middleman, tried to find someone interested and then see if they could get the seller interested as well.
We're in Rio Cuarto is what? Rio Cuarto.
Es una de las bases de los asientos de la base aérea de la
It's
Fuerza
one
Argentina.
of the Air Force bases of the Argentine Air Force.
Page 39 of this document says Argentine Air Force will provide an organizational and intermediate training program, including on-the-job training, and will provide fully qualified instructor personnel to conduct the training. The training will be provided in Rio Cuarto, Argentina. How could that kind of offer be made without somebody in Argentina in the Air Force agreeing to provide training and without providing the base?
Por supuesto que
Of course,
el ofrecimiento
the
se hace
offer
función
is
de
made
la Fuerza Aérea y el Ministerio de
based
Defensa
on
y
the Defense
Nacional.
Ministry and the Air Force authorizing the sale. It's a premise, a hypothesis of the author of this paper that they would have the air base and the pilots for purposes of this training. It's part of the purchasing of aircraft, that if you buy aircrafts of a certain sophistication, the training goes with the purchase.
Well, did any sales of aircraft take place while you were the defense minister?
The only attempt that occurred during my job was the sale of planes to the United States. Unfortunately, this attempt failed.
Did BCCI handle that?
Directamente se trató con el Pentágono aquí en Washington.
We dealt directly with the Pentagon. The head of the Joint Staff, the Minister of Defense, came up here to talk to Pentagon officials, and This was the idea. The idea was to sell Argentine planes, but unfortunately, this never came to fruition.
What year was that?
1988.
1988.
Fin del 87,
The
principio
end
del
of 87, the beginning of 88.
Pero no eran aviones Mirage, eran aviones producidos en Argentina.
But these were not Mirages. These were aircraft produced, manufactured in Argentina.
So there was no sale that you ever knew of or became or were aware of Mirage aircraft? Just one or two last questions, if I may, Mr. Rodriguez. Are the accusations that are currently being made in Argentina about what is called Yoma Gate, which is a whole series of questions referring to former in-laws of the president, are those accusations at all related to BCCI's involvement in Argentina?
El caso está en la justicia en este momento.
The case is before the courts right now.
La jueza que está
I
interviniendo
recall that the judge, the lady
iniciado el pedido de juicio político a ella
judge,
por la Cámara de Diputados.
has also been indicted by the Chamber of Deputies. What her actions are being also audited by the Supreme Court. Therefore, we can't really say much at this point. Just add information from the newspapers exclusively, where there is a witness who has appeared in court saying that he came to Argentina at the suggestion of Mr. Faraón, and that this witness also involves former officials of the Argentine government in this whole episode, which we have come to call Yomagate. I repeat, these are just newspaper reports about such episodes.
Did any high government officials ever intervene on behalf of BCCI's hotel project or other projects?
En la presentación pública
In the public presentation of the hotel project, capitalizing the foreign debt,
intervino con carácter profesional,
a professional role was taken by a person who later became the president of the central bank, Javier González Fraga. He was an advisor at the time.
And his name, that was the president of the central bank?
Javier
González Fraga, president of the central bank under Minim.
And did the president ever say whether or not he had to intervene personally? Did he say that publicly?
Le voy a dar la referencia concreta.
I will give you a concrete reference on this, Mr. Chairman.
En un reportaje publicado en el diario
In a report in the newspaper La Nación, July 13th, 1990,
señor presidente, respondiendo una pregunta,
the president, answering a question, said personally
tuvo que librar de
he
trabas
had
de
to
corrupción, de espera de
free
dádivas, la adjudicación para
the
construir el
adjudication
Hotel
or
Hyatt
the
al lado de la Embajada de Francia.
bidding to build the Hyatt Hotel, free from bribes and kickbacks, etc.
So there were concerns about that, is that correct? There was concern about bribes and corruption in terms of the BCCI link with Hyatt Hotel, correct?
Ciertamente, señor presidente,
Certainly,
porque nuestro pedido de
because
informes
our
apunta
request
precisamente a
for
eso,
information
conocer,
points exactly
las
there,
razones por las
to
cuales
find out
el presidente
why
Menem declara
President
esto.
Menem said this.
Los funcionarios que
And
presuntamente estuvieran involucrados en
the
una
officials
cuestión de esta naturaleza,
presumably involved
cuando
in a
habla de
matter of this
gestiones,
kind,
cuáles son
and
el
when he
tipo de
talks
gestiones que
about
debe realizar el presidente.
démarches or steps, what kind of steps was he talking about that the president had to engage in?
Has your effort to try to get into BCCI's dealings now been frustrated or difficult for any reason?
Unfortunately, we have received no reply. I mentioned to you 4 requests for information that we in the Chamber of Deputies have forwarded to the executive, and none of them have received a reply to date.
All right, well, unfortunately, we have gone well beyond the time that I thought I was going to be able to here, and I regret that because I know that this winds up being a little bit shorter and somewhat constricted. I'm going to leave the record open because I think staff may want to talk to you about specifically what we're going to put in terms of your documentation. I'd like to thank the interpreters very, very much for the excellent job that they have done. I know it's very difficult to do this simultaneously and with some of the complicated concepts that we've been dealing with here, but I very much appreciate it. And I particularly appreciate the time that you have taken. I think it's been helpful to us to try to understand what you do know and what you don't know, and what the state of knowledge is with respect to Argentina, and what the capacity to be able to get that at this is. I think there are some serious questions about what BCCI was doing there. We're not going to answer them all here, but we're getting at least a sense of some of the tentacles that are out there. And it may be that down the road we're going to want to talk to some of your law enforcement experts about the problems of money laundering and the bank enforcement issues, which neither of you are expert in, but which are very important to us in understanding the international linkages of the flow of this money. There's an awful lot of information that is going to come out in the course of the Morgenthau investigation and also our own, and we're going to probably have to wait until some further investigative work has been done before we proceed down that road. We will be proceeding in September when we next meet with the testimony of individuals here in Washington, Mr. Clifford and Mr. Altman, and until that point in time, we will stand adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
That concludes our coverage of this hearing on the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. For more information, write to the Subcommittee on Terrorism, Narcotics, and International Operations at 446 Dirksen Senate Office Building in Washington.